Hi, thank you for watching the Louie File with me. We're in a series about Jesus' I am statements found in the Gospel of John. Today we're going to look in John chapter 10. There's actually two of those I am statements in John 10. So I don't know, we're probably going to have to break them up a little bit. But they're right next door to each other. John 10 verse 9 and verse 11. So right now we're just going to focus on the one in verse 9. Jesus says in John 10:9, I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. Wow. So just before this, he's talking about being the shepherd and how he's the door of the sheep. I guess he hasn't got to the shepherd point yet. Let's see. He's telling us, let's back up a second. John 10:1. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up some other way, he's a thief and a robber. But he who enters the door is a shepherd of the sheep. So, my understanding is that back in the day, and maybe even still today in some places in the world, shepherds would be out with their flocks, and at night, sometimes they would, I guess, be close to a village or an area where there are other shepherds and other flocks, and they would maybe bring them in for the night, where they didn't have to sleep outdoors, the shepherd that is, and they would corral them into one big pen. This is the story I heard. And then the next morning, the shepherds would come out. There may be 3 flocks in this one big pen overnight. But the shepherds would come out and they would call their sheep out. And the shepherd and the sheep had a relationship. The sheep knew the voice of that shepherd, and he would call them all out, and they would come out. Only his sheep would come out. And then the other shepherd would come, and only his sheep would come out. But if they were not fortunate enough to have such a big pen to stay in overnight, the story goes that the shepherd might have to be the door. Be the very door, and he would have to find an area so he could pin up the sheep in such a way that he himself might have to lay down in this area and be the very door to the shepherd, to the sheep. It's interesting because Jesus goes on later in John 10 to say that he lays down his life. You know, the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. So that's a clear picture of the shepherd himself laying down on the ground. No wolves, no one is going to get to those sheep through that door if he doesn't want them to. And anybody that's coming around any other way is a thief and a robber. Because if you go through the door, the shepherd himself is that door, if you go through him, then he knows you, and you're safe to go in and out and find pasture. So he is the one that keeps the sheep. He is the door, and only through him can we go, can we come and go. So he says, I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he'll be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. He is the door to the sheep. It's so great. You know, this is kind of hearkening back, I think. There's a story in the Old Testament, in Ezekiel 34, I think it is, and about how God was getting on to the shepherds of Israel during that time. And it's pretty strong language he uses, but I think that maybe Jesus here in John 10 verse 11, I'll go ahead and throw this one in there too. He says, I am the good shepherd. The door and the shepherd kind of go together here. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. There you go. So he's the door and he's the shepherd, because the shepherd sometimes had to become the door. All right. So I tell you what, he's the door. All right, now here's what I want you to see today. I am the door. So Jesus is saying, I am the only way in or out. I'm it. You got to go through me. Later on in John 14, he gives us another I am statement. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no man comes to the Father but by me. That is a very exclusive statement. And I realize in our day and age, If anybody, there's probably going to be people seeing this video and they're going to say, "You are nuts, Louie. Jesus can't be the only way. Of all the millions and billions of people and all the different cultures and all the different beliefs in God and gods and goddesses down through the ages, you're going to sit in here and tell me that Jesus is the only way." Well, you know what? I'm telling you what Jesus himself said according to the scriptures. That's what I'm telling you. It's not, Louie didn't make this up. This is not my game. This is not my plan. This is God's plan. And my understanding is we have the option of getting on board with God's plan and coming to him by way of Jesus, or we can just make up our own plan and not come to God, because he's offered us one way and one door. That's it. And his name is Jesus Christ. And he loves you, and he laid down his life for you so that you could come to God the Father by way of him. So I would encourage you, implore you to do that if you haven't ever done that. If somehow you've come by this video and you're not a believer, I'm praying for you, and I'm hoping that you will come to see Jesus and see who he himself said he was. Not what the world has told you, not what you always heard, not what you've always just thought or imagined, but get to know who Jesus himself really is because of who he tells us he really is. And place your faith in him. All right. Join me next time. We're going to look a little closer at this good shepherd and how Jesus said, "I'm the good shepherd." And we're going to go back to Ezekiel 34 and dig around a little bit to see a little deeper meaning as to what this is really about. I hope you'll join me then. I'll see you next time on the Louie File. Thanks a lot for watching me.